Hello and welcome to the Garden Log with me, Ben Dark. A slightly different episode from the one I had planned today. I was going to go to the botanical gardens down in Riva del Garda, that great big lake in the north of Italy. But the clock and calendar have slid onwards and it's now November and they are closed. So instead I have driven around the lake a little bit, parked up and walked up this mule path that I'm on now towards a deserted medieval village above Brenzone on the side of the lake. And here I will be talking about that interaction between plants and architecture that I'm so fond of, and some of the other things that we have seen in the nearly 2 weeks we've spent in Italy in this wonderful, changeable, autumnal time of year. We started down on the south, on the Amalfi coast, swimming in the sea, bathing in the sunshine, spotting little lizards basking on the walls, and applying sun cream and other things that you wouldn't expect to be doing at the end of October. And then we left there and drove north up to Perugia and so left the classical south and headed into the medieval period. It was quite fun. The weather changed on our way up. So as we were driving that A1 motorway that skirts Rome, we had the yellow leaves from all the poplar and willow scurrying across the road in great gusts, and then the starlings in the sky almost mimicking them. And it was very moody and romantic. Oh, here we go. I'm just starting to see some houses here and a load of Begonia cordifolia hanging over a wall. That's the elephant here. Flowered incredibly profusely this year. You can see the old flower stems all drooping down. And it's just starting to take on those red tones that it will wear all autumn. It looks really good there. It almost looks like a vast alpine, as if I had been shrunk down to a sort of mouse size and I was looking at a wall covered in saxifrage. It's very good. This whole area is dry stone wall terrace olive growing country, which has completely terraformed the landscape. Oh, there's some euonymus. I was talking about those last week. There's euonymus growing down there below me on the lower terrace. This has all been transformed by human hands, and these wonderful dry stone walls that are now starting to crumble a little bit, as it is understood that this method of olive growing is not really very productive. The new methods of olive growing, they almost grow them like hedges, and then they have those big tractors on stilts that drive over the lanes of olives and harvest them and prune them in that manner. So anyway, here the terraces have slightly started to decay, and the soil is washing down the hill after thousands of years of men trying to stop it doing just that. And that means you get a little bit of the root exposed on some of these olives. So they almost seem to be doing the splits. There's gaps between them where you can see right through at root level, which is quite exciting. Just coming into the town now. It's not completely abandoned because I can see telegraph wires and electric lights. Some arras fencing here, the type you'd use on construction sites, and a little bit of scaffolding with the most brilliant view out over Lake Garda. The sea sparkling blue, and there's little flashes of bougainvillea still flowering down there, which is quite a contrast this morning. This morning we went up into the mountains. The mountains have been completely hidden from us for 2 days, and then they revealed themselves beneath this cover of cloud, and you see what the cloud had been up to. It had carpeted them in snow. So of course we went rushing up there and had a picnic above the snow line looking down, and poor baby's hands got incredibly cold and red as he got them wet in the tomato juice. So we had to abandon that in floods of tears, come down the mountain. I just found the most fantastic platform here looking out. There really is no one else in this village. This is decayed in the right sort of way, where we're catching it before it's reduced to foundations alone. There are still roof beams in the shells of houses. Some of them have glass in the windows, and some of them obviously have people living in them, which is nice, going up between an arch between two old stone walls here at the moment. Really what I want to find is evidence of some gardens that have overgrown, so we can see what was growing there. There's a sort of looming bit of rag in that window which slightly spooked me. Of course, this could just be a normal Italian town. They do tend to close down around lunchtime. Maybe everyone's just having a little rest, gone inside to watch some television. They'll all be back out here again later. Just walking under a big archway now. It's a very rustic alleyway. I'd like to go down there, but it's all fenced off. And some brilliant country-built ladders. Oh, they're sleds. Those are the mule sleds. They're not ladders. So the mules on these roads up here, poor things, didn't even get wheeled carts. I guess wheels break and are hard to fix and steam together into circles. And mules are cheaper than employing a good cartwright, so you just drag them brute force on little sleds. And those were the sleds they used in that abandoned building. It's a great big square block, completely hung with ivy. There are great big fig trees growing everywhere around here. Well, look, I can find a little signboard over here. Here we go. It was rebuilt in the 18th century, but it is still characterised by the original appearance of a hut. Very good. Let's see if it's open. I think it might be locked. Oh no, there's a big metal bolt. Big metal bolt. And wonderful frescoes on the wall. Presumably 18th century frescoes. Here's the guest book. Let's see where people have come from. Germans. This is obviously on the German tourist trail. Lots of Germans writing all sorts of lovely messages here. See when the most recent was here. The 5th, Gunpowder Plot Day, that's today. So there are other people in these hills. There are some Germans around here somewhere. We just don't quite know where they are. Out of the church now. Let me just close that up. Lock that away. I'll carry on up here. There's a dog barking in the distance. There's a little veg patch up here next to the church. There's some lovely calendulas, still in flowering as calendulas always are. They're almost unstoppable things. And there's a little hebe and some chrysanthemums, which is always good to see in the autumn. We like to see chrysanthemums. I think that they're tipped. They're tipped for a big comeback over the next few years. They're going to be the next dahlias. I hear rumblings in the gardening world. The gardeners got themselves a little brushwood pile there. There's some very rough little picnic tables to sit and eat their produce at. I'm just going to head round the other corner in the garden. There's some fantastic old olive trees shading it. This must be a place that gets completely sun-blasted. And there's strawberries growing right up to the edge. I'm going to carry on up the hill. There's a little cliff to my right. If I fall off, I'm in trouble. Just skirting the edge of the electric fence. There are vine-type tomatoes. Those brilliant tomatoes that produce fruit sort of the size of a marble, growing over almost beanpole frames, hanging down to do their fruit. And then there are some bigger, torpedo-shaped, like a really meaty bomb you'd drop to destroy a city, over there on taller frames. Don't know if they're going to make it in time. As I said, there's snow up in the mountains already. Oh, and here we've got chilies. Chilies growing up some little poles, looking lovely and reddening up. And then a beautiful explosion of chard behind them. Quite shocking to see that. It doesn't have a bed of its own. It's just there, incredibly red-stemmed, like a little alien plant amidst all the green. It's very nice to see. And then some pumpkins just subduing to mildew. And then, of course, as one must, a great overhanging cap of lavender off the side of the wall. It's very good. Makes one want to be a vegetable gardener, which has never been a part of my career, but seeing how fun it would be to stagger around a place like this, picking things and eating them, really must be magnificent. Anyway, let's leave this little vegetable garden. Continue on up the hill. You can hear running water ahead. I wonder what that is. Anyway, what was I saying? It was very interesting to see the ruined towns of Herculaneum and Pompeii, which I had never visited before. But I was a little bit upset, obviously, to see that no gardens had survived, no plaster casts of ornamental trees, and no carbonised ornamental plants, as you found the carbonised wood at Herculaneum. There's this traditional belief that Roman gardens became very decadent along with the rest of the Roman civilization, and that somehow in the early days of the Republic, Roman gardens were simple spaces of honest herb, and then as it transformed itself into an empire, they became decadent places of sin and vice and invited their own destruction. Which is quite an attractive narrative, but not one I entirely believe in, I think, because I think there's probably always been a desire to showcase wealth and to decorate where one can. I think that's part of being a human. And it just happens that we have more surviving text from the days of empire than we do the days of the Republic. So it's there we get Pliny the Younger boasting about his magnificent villa. Oh look, here we go. Here's some original stone on this mule track, and you can see the groove worn by those sleds. Those poor donkeys, nothing decadent about them. Anyway, yeah, people like Pliny the Younger giving elaborate descriptions of his villa, where he has his name in topiary and the name of his gardener in topiary, spelled out in boxwork in the grounds. And I think wanting to celebrate one's gardener in a hedge is probably a part of what it's about being human, isn't it? So, anyway, not so certain about all of that. I'm above the ruined town now. It's coming to a little rock face here. Let's see if there's a good viewpoint. Sun blasting down. There's a very good tree here, just outlined against the lake. An olive tree in a wonderful S-bend. Very simple, with only the blue water behind it, which is wonderfully effective. I always think that Italy's landscape is a more silhouette-based landscape than any other country. I know you've got the great poplar avenues of France, but there's nothing that beats that transition between the south and the stone pine with its fantastic mushroom cloud canopy, and then heading north and suddenly seeing the ridges toothed and spiked with the pencil cypress. And the two trees are more emblematic and evocative than any other. Particularly, I think, those pencil cypress. Seeing them up on a hillside makes you realise how important other people's possessions are to your view. You can see why 18th century landowners would just buy a hill in the distance and knock down the ugly towns and improve it and put a grove up there, because it makes a difference every day to walk out and see a distant grove. I just turned around to look back the way I came. So now I'm looking from the south to the north along the length of the lake, and I can see the snow where I was this morning and the big sticky lump of land by Riva. And then down to my right is a wild holm oak, one of the evergreen oaks, particularly small leaf evergreen oak of this particular region. And this is the hillside before man. This is what would have been here before we took the land and terraced it and turned it into our olive groves. And no doubt it is what is going to come if olive cultivation is given up here. More holm oak, more bramble, more of this attractive wispy grass I'm walking past now. I wonder if I should turn back and investigate the source of that plinkling music, the source of that water dripping down. I'm going to turn around and come back down the hill. It's very interesting. You can see this from space. I'm just looking back at the old village, and it is that grey olive green all around, with just occasional intrusions of autumnal red and yellow. Then as we move away from the village, the hillside becomes redder and more orange, and there are other colours. The effect is like, you know, those incredibly distinctive removal man's blankets, which seem to be made from hammering together bits of cloth. And where there is olive mixing with this wilder holm oak and deciduous woods, it looks exactly like one of those cloths. You can almost stroke the texture with your eyes. We didn't do as much garden visiting as I'd like here, because there are many demands upon one's time in Italy. But we did go to the Villa Cimbrone, which some of you might have been to or heard about. It's the one above Ravello, with the fantastic infinity terrace jutting out over the sea. And it's a sort of Edwardian-ish garden. And I think it's fair to call it Edwardian, rather than just being a Britishism, because it was built by a Brit, built by a banker, who bought it in about 1907, I think. Then it became a very Bloomsbury kind of place. I think that Vita Sackville West had a hand in the rose garden-y bits. And I don't know if it's because I knew that before I was visiting, or if I had felt it naturally, but I got a distinctly Sissinghurst vibe from the place. There's this bit in the letters of Vita Sackville West, Harold Nicholson, her diplomat husband, where Harold's talking about the allure of Sissinghurst, and how the allure lies in its privacy, its sense of recess from the world, which isn't particularly to do with its location, because down there on the Kentish Weald it's rural, but it's not the Outer Hebrides, but it's because of these successions of barriers, the court, the gate, the outer gate, the inner gate, the wall, the tower, and passing each one feels like a pass into a further layer of sanctum. And you felt this about the Villa Cimbrone. It's a walk up from town between narrow walls. You can't drive, and that feels like a defendable place in itself. And then you get to this incredible flight of steps, beautifully welcomingly laid with potted pelargoniums up each side, as I think every staircase should be. But still, it feels like another barrier, and at the top this grand arch with these eminently slammable doors, so you can see that it's a place where you could say no one here. And then you have to go past gatehouse bits and towers clad with Boston ivy, which again felt very, very Sissinghurst, and down a long wisteria walk, closed in again before you reach the expanse and infinity of the terrace. And I felt that it it did feel private. This is good. Right, I can hear the water tumbling and chunkling down there. Now I'm just walking up through a bit of rough pasture, I guess, the bonfire bit, towards some olive trees that are covered in vines, the dead vines, dried out climbers that have been smothering them at some point. I wonder what on earth has the vigour to do that, because these are full height olive trees. We think of the olive as a short tree, but that's because humans keep it short. It can actually grow pretty darn tall. Some of these have been left as the natural height olive grove, and they've obviously been attacked by something vigorous, because they've been chopped down to avoid them all tumbling down the hillside. I'm having to speak up a bit because there's water dripping from the rock face above me. Just going to see what it was that climbed over them. It's just bramble. It can't be pure bramble. It must be a rose. Let me come a bit closer. Yeah, I think it's a climbing rose of some sort that has gone completely... No, it's bramble. It is bramble. Oh my gosh, I'm glad that I have never met the bramble that could do that in the flesh. How fantastic. As is proper, there's lots of little cyclamen leaves under my feet here, and some sort of solanum, some sort of nightshade family member hanging about as well. I'm going to go up to this water drips. I tell you what I'll do. I'll make a concession to audio recording, and I won't say anything interesting while I'm up here, so that it doesn't matter if I'm drowned out. Nearly fell over there. Lots of cyclamen here, blooming for who knows, blooming for no one but us, because this seems infrequently visited. It's not a waterfall as such, it's more of a curtain of drips coming down this rock face. It's quite funny on my drive here. It's a beautiful sunny day today, but in all the tunnels, the water of the last few days, the horrendous rainstorms, is still dripping down. There's a reminder of things that were. There's some very good wild salvia. Just finished blooming down here. What type that is? It's got a buttery yellow flower. The leaves aren't particularly scented. It looks very nice. Right. Leave that dripping with my promise not to say anything interesting fulfilled. I'm going to scramble down this hill. Apologies for any cursing and slip-ups. Goat-like scurry. Elegantly done. Tracing this dripping, wet watercourse down into the bottom, where there are a few umbelliferous wild parsley type flowers growing amongst the luxuriant stinging nettle crop. This is good, rich soil stuff, you can see. Having seen all of the starlings scurrying over the road, I was reading about starlings this morning, and I found out that one of their ways to feed is on this soft grassland like this, and they just wander around stabbing their beaks into the soil, and sometimes they hit a worm or a beetle or an ant or a grub of some sort, and it seems like a remarkably inefficient way to feed, but it shows us just how full of life the soil is, particularly in untreated grassland. That can be a viable method to sustain a population of millions. Random beak stabbing. It's always nice to think of the teeming life under our feet. Some fellow visitors sitting by the church in the sunshine now. Buongiorno. Back through there, and I'm back in the buildings now. There's one here, bare windows hung with a very rich, regal red sailcloth. The one next to it, number 9, looks inhabited. Very smart modern shutters. I wonder how it feels to live in a semi-abandoned village with strange people wandering around, peering at your gardens. This area is very good mushroom country. I just saw quite a good one there. We had mushrooms for lunch yesterday, but we foraged ourselves. Staying with my brother-in-law up here. He and his wife are very expert foragers and land livers, and they took us out to a secret location in the hills, and we went scurrying around for these little orange-stemmed winter chanterelles. Vast amounts of them, because it had been raining solidly for 2 days. We filled baskets and baskets, took them home for a simple and oil-filled lunch. It's a good bramble-filled courtyard here. I'm sticking my head into this ruined building. Big twisted beams. I wonder if that's chestnut. It looks like chestnut wood to me. There are chestnuts growing higher in these mountains, in some of the valleys between them. And the ground is being completely taken over in here by bramble, and then nettle that is almost behaving like bramble. Nettles that have grown to full height at about 8 foot, and then collapsed downwards and shot again and flowered again from their arching backs, which is quite an exciting way to grow. There's ivy coming through some of the blind infilled windows, and there's another fig just yellowing in the corner in front of what would have been the main window. The beams have completely rotted from where the first floor would have been. Let's go to next door. A few padlocked doors, and then another one just round the corner here. Looks completely inhabited. It's got a lovely frosted glass door, like you might see in any housing estate on the outskirts of London. Oh look, here's a rustic gate into something of an orchard grove. There's a big abandoned oil tank there. More figs growing from the foundations. A stop sign from a road lying completely abandoned. It's strange because you think, oh, when was the last time a car was here? I certainly couldn't drive up here. It's been left there, just dumped, and crowd control barrier as well. Oh look, here looks, there's a signboard, a dumped signboard leaning against the wall. If I open this up, I might be able to find out what was this from. Campo di Brenzone. Lago di Garda, in love, 15th, 16th and 17th of February 2020. Ah, there we go. So that was just as the virus was hitting this part of Italy. The Festival of Love, maybe one of the last events to go on here. I can see a good little wild salvia growing down there, but it's over some strands of barbed wire, so I think I'll let it flower on alone. Keep going down this hill here. Here's more of a garden structure. It's a vast overgrown oleander, which I don't like as a plant. I think because I associate it too strongly with the interlane verges you get in tourist resorts in Greece. But here it looks nice. It's sort of multi-stemmed, leaning. I'm in the ruin of a building or perhaps a barn, and there's a vast, great olive tree smash its way through where the roof would have been. And there are wonderful ivies growing all over the walls. And then there are little yuccas growing in front of the doorways, and what looks like might have been an orchard beyond. What a wonderful space. Taking some pictures of that a very attractive oleander, just in case we want evidence that it can be a romantic plant. I wonder where this road leads to. You can hear the buzzing of the lakeside traffic down below. There were all sorts of little boats knocking about there earlier, doing some sort of event. People are stationed on the sides of the road with tripod binoculars. Keen boat watchers come to see them gad about, live and in the flesh. There's another ruined wall here from someone's garden. We'll just pop in and see what we've got there. Cyclamen clumps, very scraggly old rue, still growing. Young self-seeded holm oak. Euonymus, reddening up very nicely and attractively. And olive trees caught in their private little moment of succumbing to the ivy. Aha, my nemesis, the vigorous endemic bramble, has fallen down to block my way. We are out once more. It's strange, this period of not working as a professional gardener. My hands are completely unpunctured. I don't have any little bits of bramble in my flesh. Normally, I suppose the brambles recognise, well, that man's part bramble himself, but at the moment I must seem entirely alien to them. This is nice. This is like a sunken alleyway, a sunken lane like you might find Devon, between a stone wall that's got a fantastic lean on it. I wouldn't want to spend too much time in its lee. It's definitely going to come down at some point. And there's some graffiti on it. Someone's written love. Maybe part of the love festival that brought on this whole period of madness. I think I found myself on some completely other hiking trail here. I cannot believe a mule could pull anything up here. That's insane. It's so steep. Some good wiggling ash trees on the side of this bank. They look like one of those ants' nests in a glass case you sometimes see, where you see all of their tunnels in cross-section. And the ash growing on these soft, copper-toned, muddy bank. It's got that same effect. All the roots shown and exposed. And there's a bit of Ruscus, butcher's broom, growing underneath, as it will. A brilliant understory plant if you want to keep people away from your understory. Very spiky evergreen, that. Down into what feels like a slightly more cultivated vineyard area. There's still a garden escapee here. A big yucca growing next to that olive tree. Now walking down into the setting sun here. Typically batteryless on my phone. So when I do wind up in some completely unknown valley, I will have to navigate on feeling alone. And this will be a 8-hour long episode. 7 of them just shivering and wailing, like my poor son was doing this morning. I wonder if there's a spring somewhere around here, because here is a big section of irrigation. Oh look, down there are 3 very cheerful little beehives with stones on their lids to stop them blowing away. They're a very Mediterranean type of hive, the hive that you can pick up and move fairly easily. Not like the ones I was talking about in Denmark, which are almost gingerbread house style in lovely wood. These look like they could be elements of a filing cabinet, handles on the side of them, metal box. Pick them up and take them where you will. I'm on a very good hairpin bend above the lake here. Some of those pensile cypress coming out on a spur of land in front of the lake. And the hairpin is hairpinning me back in the right direction. So I might indeed make it home for dinner. The road of civilization is getting louder. No doubt all those little boat people driving home with their little boats to talk about all their exploits. And here's a little planting of cherries, oozing in that way that only cherries can. My goodness, they're fantastic oozers. I'm just going to lean over here and poke that bubble of sap. They form a wonderful skin. I'm just prodding it now, which is gooey and hard to puncture, but still moves. If we're going to recreate an age from insects trapped in sap, we will want to find the cherry wood. The breeze has got up. I can hear the waves crashing now on the side of the lake. There's a lovely little beach I can see from up here. There's a shingly protected thing, big flat slabs of pink stone looking after it. Looks like a very welcoming place to swim. And finally, I can see a handrail and I can see a tarmac road. We are out of mule country into the realms of man, and there's a digger. And that is all we have time for from the ruins of the garden log. Thank you very much for listening to what was a fairly eccentric episode. Just trying to work out which way I go here. There's a shrine, a little shrine here. To who else? To Madonna, our Madonna. And there she is. A donation box and one of those pictures of an elderly Jesus sitting on her lap. Not quite bearded, but you get the impression he's only just shaved. He's got a very mature face on him. I myself haven't shaved for a couple of weeks. I'm looking particularly holiday bound. I'll have to get rid of that before I return to the crisp and the clean Scandinavians. I'm going to go down this way. And here we are. Welcome to cultivation. Agapanthus leaves, begonias in pots, marigolds, pom-pom and African tumbling down from a little flower bed. We're back once more in civilization, which means it is time for me to say to you goodbye and thank you very much for listening to this episode of The Garden Log. I'll be back in a fortnight or so. Until then, thank you very much, and I hope you have a wonderful time, whether you manage to get gardening, get up a mountain, get to the side of the lake, get to a deserted village, or do none of these things. There's other ways to enjoy your life, and I'm sure you'll find them. Thank you very much, and goodbye.